I am happy to be joined by my guy, Brandon Sneide of Titletown Lounge, Brew City Podcast, and now Packer Report, as well as Game On Wisconsin. So many things that you are now a part of. It's good to see you in all the works that you do, your writing that you're doing now, and all of that. How have you been, Brandon?
What's up, Francisco? Yes, I know we had some scheduling issues. My life is completely moving way faster than I can control at times. So
Yeah.
I appreciate the flexibility. I'm doing good. I'm doing real good. Bucks basketball is back. So as the Brewers finished up, I get to turn my attention. Obviously, the Packers are going on, but I get to turn my attention to some basketball, which is fun. So yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. As always excited to be here.
Good. Glad to hear that. So, Monday I had Josh come on and Josh Walduck reviewing the brew as well as host of Bernie's Beer District.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you've been on his podcast. That
Yeah.
He and Tyler do a great job there.
Yep.
And I was telling him this off season or winter when baseball is no longer here, unless you're a Braves fan or a Nationals fan. But for us fans of the Brewers, baseball is done. And I was thinking, what do I talk about now that the season is over? And a lot of times, content creators, writers, and I've seen it, and I don't think it's anything wrong. We're about to do it right now. They do the best of the best list for different positions. So I thought, hey, I'm going to go with the worst. So me and Josh talked about the 3 worst catchers in Brewers history. If you have not seen that video, go ahead and watch that one after you watch this one. If you're watching on YouTube, click the like button. Also follow Brandon wherever you get your podcast. You can hear his podcast as well. So we talked about the worst catchers. Now, Brandon, I have you on because I want to talk about the 3 best catchers in Brewers history. Now, everyone's going to disagree with both lists. I had people reach out on YouTube and Twitter. Hey, what about so-and-so? Or what about that's okay. This is not the definitive list. You can watch a player, and I'm sure you've done this too. You watch a player, think, wow, he's terrible. And then you look at his stats, and you're like, oh, I guess he wasn't that bad. But like the eye test versus the stats. So what were your like parameters when you were figuring out who were the 3 best Brewers catchers? Like, what did you use to come up with this?
Well, to be honest with you, if you look back at the Brewers history, they've had some really good catchers actually come through the organization. So the list was tough to narrow it down to just 3. So the first thing that I went off of was eye test. What catchers did I, see in my lifetime? And obviously as we talk about the list, I only saw a few of them. 2 of them are going to be on the list, but so that was probably a little bit of bias. I wasn't old enough in the 70s and early 80s to witness all of those. But, the eye test for me was the initial thing. Who do I remember watching? And then going back and pulling up the numbers and obviously how many years they played in Milwaukee, the contributions they made on the field, what the success they had as a team, as an organization, obviously individually, but also for the team.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So let's go with your 3rd best Brewers catcher. Who do you got?
I'm going with the first Australian-born player to make the Major League Baseball's All-Star game, a guy that I grew up watching. Now, when I grew up playing baseball, I grew up as a catcher. I played the catching position, and a guy that I watched growing up right in my childhood, Dave Nielsen. And I remember him, pretty vividly. His OPS is out of this world. I mean, if you look back at it now, he only played with the Brewers. I know it was for like 6 or 7 years, but at 817 OPS, it's the 9th best in Milwaukee Brewers history, which is astonishing when you think about the players that have come through the organization. So he's my number 3. I know I debated between him and Charlie Moore. I wasn't old enough for Charlie Moore, so I wanted to have a little bit of a person, a little bit of myself in the list and not just look at stats and numbers.
For sure.
Dave Nielsen was a guy that I watched playing growing up for quite a few years.
Fun fact about him, he played for the American League when the Brewers were in the American League, and then he played for the National League when the Brewers switched over to the National League. Yeah, no, great hitter at that time when he was playing, I was actually living in California, so I was watching a lot of different baseball players than the ones that you were watching growing up. But yeah, he's a really good hitter. OPS is off the charts. First Australian born to make an All-Star. That would make Carl, my friend, follow him on Twitter, big Brewers fan out there in Australia. That would make him very excited to see that one of his people made the list. And there have been some really good Australian players in the league. I think of like Liam Hendricks right now on the White Sox. And my mind's blinking. There's a couple other pitchers I had for a split second. Now I can't think right now, but but there have been some really good Australian players. Yeah, that's a great number 3 on your list here.
Yeah, I mean it's tough, for a position when you look at it. Throughout the history, the Brewers have had some, like I said, they've had some good guys come through. So it was tough, it was hard. And again, I know, keyboard warriors will come after us, after this is all done. And how could I not have so-and-so in there? I know Nielsen didn't play 10 plus years with the organization. He was here for 7. But well, I think, I mean, to have the 9th best OPS in Brewers history, yeah, it's hard to leave that out of the top 3.
Yeah, for sure. And he played 8 years with the Brewers. His first year is about 51 games.
Yeah.
He had in his 8 seasons with the Brewers, his career stat line was 284 batting average, 91 RBIs, 20 home runs, 30 hits. So he had a decent career. He didn't strike. He didn't have a super high batting average, but his batting average was respectable. And then again, of course, his on-base percentage was off the charts. And 8 years is nowadays, I mean, even back then, good. 8 years is a pretty decent career. And especially with one team, we don't see very many players stick around on one team for,
well, especially catchers too, because you got the shelf life for catchers is not like it's not very long, especially back then where they didn't have the equipment that they have now.
Especially when you can just dive right into a catcher and try to knock the ball out of their hands. I remember when that rule changed. I think it was Buster Posey who had gotten hurt maybe like 2011 or so. And then next thing you know, the rule has changed. You can't just plow into a catcher, try to knock the ball loose from their hands. You have to give them their lane and all that. But yeah, the shelf life of a catcher is shorter than other positions. So 8 years on a major league team, with the numbers that he had, is very impressive. Who is the number 2 catcher on your list here?
This is where I think,
oh boy,
this is where I think people are going to get mad, and maybe not. I don't know. Who cares? But I could have gone either way with this. It's another one of those eye tests. Who did I watch is the first thing, or see is the, one of the first things that pops out. And I went with Jonathan Lukroy as my number 2. No. I know he's a fan favorite. He, everybody does the Luke chat chant.
Yeah.
Out in Milwaukee. And I know that he could arguably be the best catcher. I know people, that have put these lists together probably have him number 1. You can't really argue it. I could see it, both ways. But he's my number 2, and he's an all-star catcher. I don't think he did. I don't want to diminish what he did in Milwaukee, but he was an all-star. He was a great catcher, defensive catcher, had a great arm. But he wasn't a guy that, to be my number 1 that I had to put over somebody else, because of his accomplishments. I thought what he did was great. In the middle of what was then a rebuild for David Stearns, trying to establish a winning culture in Milwaukee, and he was still productive during those years.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And he came up, age 24. He put up really good numbers first season in the league, 75 games. He batted .253, had 26 RBIs, 4 home runs. And then he's pretty much produced ever since he's been in the leagues, especially with Milwaukee, 391 slugging, 265 batting average, 313 on base percentage, 391 slugging his second full season. He had a really good season in 2014, made the All-Star game twice, both with Milwaukee, and one with Toronto. Oh, sorry, hold on here. What am I looking at? Yeah, he made the All-Star game in 14 and 16. Really good catcher, and he was one of those players that in a rebuilding like era kind of he really gave the fans someone to cheer for. And I think what he means to the city of Milwaukee in that sense may be a huge reason why people would put him at number one, just because of the what he meant to the city. But no, there's no right and wrong answer. Is I guess my point is. I mean, he could be the best catcher in some people's mind. He could be the second best catcher, and everyone's opinion will differ. But yeah, I mean, he has some really good seasons in Milwaukee, and even after.
Yeah, and he's the most recent, great catcher. There's you could argue there's more on the way for the Brewers. You've had a couple good ones come through lately, but he's the most recent. But what do you remember most about Jonathan Lucroy? And that's a question, like that's an open-ended question. For me, Francisco, he was great for his for a handful of years in Milwaukee, but ultimately he was the reason we landed Christian Yelich. I don't know if you remember.
Was that the Brinson trade?
David Stearns grouped him up. Yep. It was a handful of guys. He sent him down to Texas and, got Lewis Brinson. Obviously, everybody knows the story. Lewis Brinson goes down to Miami, and the Milwaukee Brewers acquire Christian Yelich. Obviously there was some voodoo magic performed by David Stearns in those trades. And obviously we didn't know what we were getting in Christian Yelich. We didn't realize he was going to be an MVP and top 10 baseball player. But he was a great catcher. He's a great person on and off the field. Like you said, multiple all-stars during the rebuild. He was one of the only things that we were cheering for out at then called Miller Park. So I could see him at any one of these positions, 1, 2, or 3. And again, it's kind of how you view the position, how you view the player. For me, he's at number 2 because he had really good years, number 1, and number 2, I was able to see him kind of transition from, a role player, bench player to everyday catcher starting an all-star game.
Yeah. And since then, since leaving Milwaukee, he had really good years in Texas, Colorado. Yeah. I think only 1 year in Oakland, and then went from LA to Chicago to Boston to the Nationals to Atlanta. He went to several teams. He actually played for the Braves. He appeared in 2 games, so he may get a ring if they
Let's hope.
Yes, as the game is going on right now, I have it recorded, so don't tell me any spoilers. But yeah, he's bounced around. He's had a couple good seasons. Who is your number 1 Brewer catcher?
Yeah, and this is another one that's gonna possibly ruffle some feathers because where he used to play, and I went with the Hall of Famer, and it goes without saying, if a guy gets into the Hall of Fame, especially the Baseball Hall of Fame, I'm going to put him above everybody else. I mean, plain and simple. No offense to Lukroy or Nielsen or Charlie Moore. Like, these guys aren't going into the Hall of Fame. Ted Simmons is in the Hall of Fame. He's my number 1. I know he was just recently elected into the Hall of Fame. I think it was just like was it last December? I think it was last winter. Yeah, because they do their Hall of Fame in the off season. But he came to the Brewers. He was a little bit older, 31 years old. He was obviously a part of that World Series run in 82. And during that season, I mean, he put up for 1982, these are good numbers, 23 home runs and 97 RBIs. That's good now. That's good right now.
Yeah. The Brewers would have taken that.
You talk about back then, 40 years ago almost. That's great. That's really, really good numbers. He was a part of, back then I think it was a 1981 Sports Illustrated magazine. They called it the trade that changed Milwaukee. And it was, if you remember, it was Raleigh Fingers, it was Ted Simmons, and there was another guy. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but and then the following year, obviously I talked about the World Series. The following year in 83, he hit 108 RBIs as a catcher. That's good. That's very really good. That's really, really good. So for me, look, We could argue, could go back and forth. Your list can look different than mine. I'm going to go with the guy that's in the Hall of Fame 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah. No, I don't see any fault in your logic. Again, like I said, anyone can, and like you said as well, anyone can have their own list. But I think no matter what list you have, these three that we mentioned are going to be in the top 3 to 5, no matter what the order is. And that's great for the Brewers to have so many good catchers in what's somewhat of a shorter, history compared to other teams here. But yeah, on the Brewers, and I know he came from St. Louis, and we're like, well, okay, St. Louis rivals. But just looking at his RBIs, in 81, he had 61 RBIs, 14 home runs, 23 home runs, 97 RBIs, 13 home runs, 108 RBIs. He got MVP votes that year in 1983.
I mean, just stop right where you're at.
Yeah.
83, 13 home runs, and 108 RBIs. That's remarkable.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to this podcast or you're watching on YouTube, to only hit 13 home runs and log 108 RBIs means you're putting the bat to the ball and in play a whole heck of a lot.
Yeah, 39 doubles, which is great. 3 triples, 13 RBIs. He had 185 hits.
Yeah.
In 600 at bat plate appearances. So yeah, he was
hard
someone who got it. He got the job done. And I mean, we can talk about this Brewers past season and how that had been their issue. When there's men in scoring position, they can't put the ball in play and kind of get the job done here. But yeah, let's recap. Go through your top 3 again for us. Starting with number 3. Who do you got?
Number 3, Dave Nielsen, guy I grew up watching. The numbers, like I said, first Australian-born player to go into the major leagues. He's 9th in the Brewers' history in OPS. I think that means something.
Mm-hmm.
So he was my number 3. Number 2 is Jonathan Lukroy, the most notable, recent, Brewers great catcher. There's been a few, obviously, that haven't been here very long. It come for a few years, but here for the rebuild, multiple All-Stars, kind of the only bright spot for the Brewers for a while until the rebuild was complete. And then number 1 went with the Hall of Famer, Ted Simmons. Again, like we were just talking about, kind of hard to, say he should be anywhere else other than number 1. If you got a gold jacket, in my opinion, you're probably pretty darn good, and you should probably be up at the top of the list. Franchise record in RBIs in 83 and 82, like we mentioned, 23 home runs and 97 RBIs out of a catcher. That really is good. Extremely, extremely good.
Yeah, no, 100%. And thank you for coming on and giving us those top 3. This is just the first in a whole series of position. We're going to go each position, then starting pitchers, then relief pitchers, and we're going to do it all. And if you haven't heard or watched our last video I did, 3 worst catchers, go ahead, check that out. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and leave your top 3 in the comments. I would love to see what your thoughts are and see if they differ than mine or even Brandon's here. Brandon, real quick before we go, give your podcast a plug and where we can find your writings and all that.
Sure. Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Brandon_Sneide. I do a Packers podcast. If there's any Packers fans out there, at Titletown Lounge. My personal podcast, my solo podcast, is actually in the making right now. I'm rebranding it, so I don't want to reveal an official name yet. I don't have everything done yet. But if you're looking for some Brewers, content to catch up on, you can follow me over at dairylandexpress.com, part of the fan-sided family. I have a couple articles that come out a week, and then obviously when the Brewers get back into spring training, we will have more as far as the Brewers, but going to be covering the free agency period. So I am curious to see what the Milwaukee Brewers do after a disappointing exit in this year's playoffs. So I like always, man, I appreciate being on here with you.
Absolutely. All right, man. I'll talk to you later.